We're going to start our afternoon session. Did anyone, what did people think of Reagan? Wasn't Reagan great in the morning and with a great opening session? And hopefully everyone got to their respective desired breakouts. So that was a good couple of sessions there. We're now going to go to Jeff Shaffer, who probably I find whenever I go somewhere and I mention Jeff's, oh yeah, I've been working with Jeff for 5 years or 10 years or whatever. And so Jeff is pretty well known. He's a associate professor here at the university. And he is going to bookend a little bit of what Reagan, where Reagan was setting it up, and he's going to talk about future of AI, Wild West of modern tech. So, Jeff Shaffer.
Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the Lindner College of Business. It's great to be here. My topic, of course, is the future of AI, the Wild West of modern tech. We'll see where this goes. A lot of the music that you were listening to is AI. Many of the images you're looking at are AI. The video that you're looking at is AI. Of course, if you're going to do an AI presentation, there should probably be a bunch of AI. There are slides available to you. You can grab this link. You will see it at the end. So when we're taking questions, you can also scan that. It'll have the slides that I'm using today all available for you. My name is Jeff Shaffer. I have been at UC about 13 years. I did 10 years as adjunct, and then I joined full-time. Prior to that, I grew up in financial services, 30 years in financial services. I ran a fintech for 7 years as their chief operating officer, and 10 years before that, I did data science, machine learning, AI, data visualization, and others. I have a book. It's called The Big Book of Dashboards, so you can check that out. And thank you, Jonathan, today. I got one plug in one of the seminars on that. Also a podcast host, which I'll talk about. Feel free to connect with me. I always try to get my dog, Toby, in the presentation somehow. So that's my dog, Toby. I'm a big dog guy. I am newly appointed as the director of the Applied AI Lab. And the first question I get is, what's the AI Lab? So here we go. 4 things about the AI Lab. The left side is about our students. It's internal. We're looking at training up faculty, staff, and our students. We're looking to get more AI in the classroom. Obviously, it's a hot topic. Teach our students and get them skilled up on that. We're looking at our curriculum. If you're not aware, we have a new MS in AI program that we're looking at. So that's something to look forward to possibly. But as of today, right now, we have a certificate in AI. And that is just like your business analytics certificate. You can do that part-time and even take some online classes. On the right side is where you come in. Number 1, we do training. We train people up. We love training Gen AI. We train Python. We train generative AI, data visualization, Tableau, Power BI, all the analytics things. I love some of the programs some of you are doing, like AI for Everyone. That's really what that is kind of geared to. The other side of it is we want to learn from you. So we want to create partnerships and go inside of your organization, and you tell us what you're doing with AI. We'd love to have more partnerships with that. That'll connect us with our students. That'll connect to co-ops. You might get some interns. You might get some case studies. You might even get some future hires. And the last piece is sort of an incubator, probably not for the people in the room who really are all in on AI, but if you're really feeling like you're not there and you don't know where to get started, we really are trying to have sort of a starter kit Spark area where we can help people kind of think about how we're going to implement AI in our organization. So that's my plug there. Chart Chat is my podcast. I'm only plugging that because we have an episode coming up very soon that I'm thrilled about, and I'll talk about that. So it's more than just chit chat, it's Chart Chat, unless of course you're playing around with a laser engraver and then your mug goes from Chart Chat to Thrack Thack, and I got it messed up. So that didn't work out so well, but my wife uses it as a selfie mug. Anyway, the special guest is Georgia Lupi. She's a data hero of mine. I've loved her work for probably 15 years at this point, and she's going to be our guest a week from Wednesday. So definitely check that out. Really amazing stuff. So you're all here to talk about the future of AI. Let me set the stage for this, because future of AI is difficult. I'm going to be one of those people that I do have a definition of AI. Reagan said, how many of you have definitions? We didn't see very many in the room. I have a very broad definition of AI because this term's been around since the 1950s. So this isn't a new term. It's really mimicking human behavior. And that doesn't have to be all that intelligent. It could just be an if-then statement. It could be if knock at a door, then we open the door. And so it's just a rules and it acts like a human. But when we get to machine learning, the machine can figure things out. It can see knocks at the door and figure out most of the time we say hello, but sometimes it's the mail person. So maybe we want to look at that. None of that is new either. The thing that's keeping us in this room right now that is talking about the future of AI are the bottom two things, the generative AI and the LLMs. And that's really what I'm going to focus on today and the advancements of where we're going with that. ChatGPT took over the world, fastest website at the time to 1 million users, 5 days, fastest to 100 million users. And the number 5,000, think about that for a second. What does that mean? That's the number of Indeed jobs right now that have the word generative AI in the job description. There we got a wow, right? So if you're not training on AI, there's the problem, right? So we have other news. We have our godfather of AI, Geoffrey Hinton, along with John Hopfield, who just won the 2024 Nobel Prize in Physics, all related to their work in AI, just a week ago. Pretty cool. So Tim said, Jeff, would you speak on the future of AI? I said, sure, I'd be happy to. What I should have said was, predictions are very difficult, especially if it's about the future, right? Who's going to be able to guess what's coming with AI? This is a very difficult task to try to figure out where we are heading. Just to give you an idea about my presentation today, those are the tools that I use to make this presentation. Some of those tools didn't exist a year ago. Many of them didn't exist 6 months ago, or weren't as good 6 months ago, weren't as good enough for me to use them. So I use some tools. I go gather information, hours and hours of YouTube videos that I watch on channels and things like that, papers and things like that. And how do I sift through that? I use generative AI to do that. I actually dumped that all into a tool called Notebook LM, and it distilled that down for me so I can narrow this down, especially when I get to this, the 2024 AI Index. It's a great report, but it's 501 pages, right? That's going to take me a while to read. So AI was used for stuff like that. So let's build from the ground up here. When I talk about the future of AI, I'm going to start with the models. The models were neural networks, 1943, not new. Deep neural networks, 2010, still not very new. And we did get to 2017 with the paper, Attention is All You Need. 136,000 citations or something at this point. This is what really set it all off. A new infrastructure and a new way of building models. The thing is now we're getting fast. The dotted line is the human baseline. And you'll see how long it took from 2012 to inch up on those things. But now in 2021, we see how fast those lines are getting up to human intelligence. And now at this point, we beat it in many respects. These are the frontier models. You've probably heard of most of these or all of these, ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, which is ChatGPT. Claude has a model. They broke off from OpenAI, so they're the competitor. They have the world-leading model right now. That's 3.5 Sonnet. We have Gemini by Google, and I kind of counted Grok out for a little while, but don't ever count Elon out. So he's kind of come along, and he's now back in the game, I think. This is the publications on AI. Check that out. 5x increase in the last 7 years on papers and materials out. The number one skill at the moment is going to come down to prompt engineering. I heard about it in a couple of the breakout rooms. If you don't ask the right question, you're not going to get the right answer. And it's not just the right question, it's how you formulate the question, how you structure the question. There are jobs, not 5,000 of them, by the way, but there are jobs for prompt engineers. People are trying to figure this stuff out. How do I get the right response out of it? And you're going to see asking the right model, the right question, makes all the difference in the world. I loved Reagan's question this morning is, how many like ChatGPT better? How many like Claude? It's like, well, the answer is, depends on what you're trying to do. And I'm going to show you that. Zero shot. I'm going to show you an example of zero shot that'll probably get your mind thinking. But zero shot means I'm not giving it any instruction whatsoever. I'm just going to turn it loose on something. Few shot is me setting up the problem and giving an example. And this chain of thought that people kind of discount and don't pay much attention to is really where we're going here in the near future. In fact, it is the future right now. Your prompts have to be structured in certain ways, again, depending on the task that you want to do, and that makes all the difference. Now, let's go back to the future of AI. OpenAI has told us what the future is. There's their steps, 1 through 5. That's their roadmap. They're not hiding it. We're at number 2. That's what they're working on. They have the preview of their reasoning model, which, by the way, how did they get reasoning model? We'll talk about that. Next, agentic workflow. We're already seeing glimpses of that. You're going to see that today. The reasoning model is a result of this chain of thought, basically breaking something down into pieces, just like any of you would do. If you had a big problem, you don't tackle the problem all at once. You break it down into steps. They do the same thing with the prompt. Sounds simple, sounds like, well, gosh, why is that such a big deal? Because that took us to the next level. We are now, with the reasoning model, at the 89th percentile of competitive programming. We are placing at the in the top 500 students at the Math Olympiad, and we've exceeded PhD levels in certain topics, like physics, biology, and chemistry. Not yet mathematics, but we're getting there. This chain of thought is really the structure that builds on all of that. And I'll show you a demo of that in a second. Again, breaking things down into a structure. And then when you have agents, we talk about agentic workflow that's coming, it gets more complicated. It starts to become a tree of thought. You have these agents working together with chains, and they can check each other, and they can adversarial, and one can do research, and one can do something else. All right, so let's see why reasoning models are important. This is ChatGPT, which was the new model not too long ago, right? ChatGPT, it came out at 3, so this is ChatGPT 4. I'm going to ask a famous problem, sort of famous problem, which is if you have a 3-gallon and a 5-gallon jug, how do you get 4? But I've thrown it for a loop. I also added a 4-gallon jug. Now, that would be obvious to all of you. How are you going to get 4 gallons out of this? Simple answer, right? ChatGPT says it measures it, it comes out with the classic problem. I use the 5 and the 3, and I empty the 3, and I do this with the 5, and I get 4. You could have just used the 4, right? Very simple. That's what we mean by reasoning. Here is the new reasoning model with chain of thought. It's not as fast, but when it hits, it says thinking. And it starts processing, and it does that chain of thought, and it starts thinking through those processes. And it only takes 6 seconds, but it comes back and says, just use the 4-gallon jug. Pretty simple, right? Okay, we'll come back to another one. But this is the other thing that we go is error. We talk about hallucinations. These models hallucinate, and Reagan talked about that. 2 things. If you make your model bigger and you apply things like chain of thought, you can reduce that error. This is a model that went from 62 billion parameters to 540, and they applied chain of thought. And that's what happened to the hallucinations. Really dropped the errors that were coming out of the model. The next thing is scaling the model, the size of the model. This has changed the mindset of everybody because everybody kind of thought it can only get so big. At some point, the curve's got to flatten out, right? It doesn't really make sense. And that didn't happen. They started throwing more and more and more data at it, and they were shocked at the results they were getting. And so what do? Now they got to go get more data. Now they got to go get more compute. Now we're going to run out of electricity and power and cards because we can't compute this stuff so much. And that is the primary reason, depends on if you think Sam Altman was nefarious or not, but that's the reason OpenAI is not really open anymore. They went from a nonprofit to now this for-profit structure because he needed to raise tens of billions of dollars. Here's the size of those things have now gotten into the trillions of tokens. In fact, we're way up there now with ChatGPT, so this is an older slide. And people are building the infrastructures. Here's Elon's take. He's got the largest cluster in the world right now. That's why I said don't count him out. He's got 100,000 H100s, and he's going to add another 50,000 H200s. It's the largest cluster in the world. And what's he going to do with it? XAI. All right, let's go back and try something else. How about a problem that's a little bit different? Now, this is kind of famous, too. They do it with Beethoven 9. That's the symphony. I changed it up because I didn't want it to just go find the answer on the internet. So I changed it to Shostakovich 5th Symphony. I was like, that's probably weird enough that it won't be out there. And so here's the question. I'm going to ask ChatGPT 4. An orchestra of 90 players takes 50 minutes to play the symphony. What if I cut the players in half? How long is it going to take to play the symphony? Okay. Yeah, some of you are laughing. Well, we're going to take those numbers. We're going to do some math. Therefore, it's going to take, hey, look what it did there. 50 minutes regardless. So ChatGPT 4 got it. ChatGPT 4 figured that out. It said, oh, okay, that's fine. Of course, the preview model, the reasoning model, got it. So it says, hey, regardless, and it's a little more, gives you more context about it. Now let's move over to Claude. This is the #1 leading model in the benchmarks right now, beating out ChatGPT. Ask the same question. What's it say? To solve this problem, let's think step by step. 90 players, and our time doubles. It makes sense intuitively. With half the numbers of players, it takes double the time. That's not how that works, right? That's not how the symphony plays, right? Okay, so then I can pitch them against each other. I can go into the chat preview, and we used to be able to bully these models quite a bit. So I'm bullying the model. I go in and I try to bully the reasoning model, and I say, hey, Claude says you're wrong. You know what? It didn't get bullied. It came back, and it said, nope, final answer, I'm right. That's pretty impressive. So now we're starting to get the glimpses of that agentic workflow. One can do a task, one can check the task, one can verify the task, one can put those things together. Reagan talked about open source. This is the future, and I think this is where Meta is leading the way. Meta came out with Llama is the model. They always have these fun names to these LLM in there somehow. So we're on model 3.2 actually is like in beta, I guess. But 3.1 is released. You have other people who've done other things with them. You'll see on there domain specific, MedLlama, Legal Llama. And you can run these literally on your laptop. They're small enough that I can run on my laptop if they're powerful enough. If you don't, you can use a tool called Grok. And you can run those and even run an API on them. That leads us to chips. That's the next thing we're going to look at. Right now, it's all GPUs. That's the one thing I just am like, gosh, if I'm Elon Musk, I don't think I'd have spent that much money on these GPUs because I just don't know how long we're going to be using GPUs. Because now, GPU, this is ChatGPT's inference. I'm asking it to write a 2,000-word essay on artificial intelligence. Now, I'm not going to make you sit through this. A year ago, you would have been fascinated that it does this, but now you're like, gosh, this is pretty slow. I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. You're bored now, right? Well, now we have the advent of LPUs. We didn't make chips for these large language models, so now they're developing chips that work with these large language models. What does that do for our inference time? Here is Grok using a large open source Llama model to write an essay, 2,000, and hit it. It's done. I hover over it. It took 1.7 seconds. So now put those two together. ChatGPT, your leading your leading reasoning model was 1 minute and 50 seconds. But look at that, 1.7 seconds. That's fast. Think about the training on that. Now, there's downsides with that too. The smaller the model, the more mistakes I might get out of that model. So what do we got here? How's it do on the 3, 4, 5 problem? It doesn't give us a great answer. It does not recognize that I could just use the 4-gallon bucket. And it certainly doesn't do well here. In fact, when I did this one, I love the answer on this. It said, a classic problem of proportion. Yeah, not really. It's not a classic problem of proportion at all. All right, so the next one's going to sound weird. I'm going to talk about quantum computing. And you're going to say, what in the world does quantum computing have anything to do with AI? And I'm going to tell you right now, it has everything to do with AI. It has everything to do where we're heading. And I hope you have some popcorn, because I have some videos. So here we go. I'm going to show you this one.
Come out on top. Standard computers, they calculate by using billions of tiny little on and off switches known as bits. Now these things, they're very reliable, they're very accurate, and they work together in sequence. So if you ask a standard computer to solve a maze, it will do so by checking through every possible path one by one until it finds a solution. Now, depending on the size of the maze, that could take seconds or minutes, or potentially, for a really big maze, even years. A quantum computer, on the other hand, works a little bit differently. There, the bits are known as quantum bits, or qubits, and rather than just being on or off, a qubit can be held in something called a superposition, where it can be both on and off at the same time. Now, okay, I know that that doesn't really make a lot of sense, but unfortunately that is just how physics works down at the atomic level. So go with me. This bizarre ability of a qubit to be in two states at once means that a series of qubits can solve lots of calculations simultaneously. And so, if you ask a quantum computer to solve a maze, it means it can consider all possible routes at once, giving you the answer in an instant. It could allow a quantum computer to complete in minutes computations so complex that it would take today's supercomputers millions of years.
So imagine what that structure does to our training paradigm on all this data, which I'm going to talk about next. That changes everything. It also, by the way, blows up encryption like RSA that all the financial institutions use. That will be problematic. Anybody a Hannah Fry fan? Well, everybody know who that was? Hannah Fry? Really? No Hannah Fry fans in here? Oh, come on. I love her. She's awesome. I could listen to her talk every day. All right, so training data. You got to train on something. What are they training on? They're training on everything. They've run out of stuff to train on. They're training on the entire World Wide Web, basically, right? So they have all the web. Not the best data source, probably, right? The web? But they have all that. They also have Wikipedia. They also have all the books. They also have all the code. They did all of that. So they basically ran out of data. Right now, as we speak, this minute, the parent company of TikTok is scraping the web and grabbing everything. And they're doing it 25 times faster than OpenAI did it. So what are they going to do with that? Right? That's China catching up. So they are working on it. The next thing is synthetic data. Reagan mentioned that. That has a problem because if you use too much of it, you'll collapse your model. You'll have just so much of this, junk in, junk out. If you use too much synthetic data, it will. That's where all the research has been this year. 3 papers on overcoming this. If you curate it and apply reinforcement learning, you can actually get better results out of the synthetic data. Why is that important? Because if we run out of data, we can keep creating more. You're creating it every day using ChatGPT. You're creating it every day when you upload your YouTube video. The next paradigm shift is going to be search. Search is so annoying now. Anybody? Google issued a code red. This was when ChatGPT came out. I don't know if anybody read the memo, because here we are 2 years into it, and this is what I get when I search data visualization software. Notice anything on there? 6 sponsored listings? That's what I get. Paid advertisements. That's it. Okay, so who's better? What about Bing? They're the leading engine. How's Bing do? This one's a little absurd because they own Power BI. Where's Power BI on the list? You got the leading software in data visualization with Tableau. Where's it on the list? They don't even know about their own software. Okay, so where does it go? This is what's happening. We're doing search with AI technology like we're going through filing cabinets. That's the problem here. And it's not any more efficient and it's not helpful. So enter companies like Perplexity, where they have a new way of doing search. Notice they not only did the sources at the top, come up with the names, they cite the sources in their text below, and they give you the answer, which is correct. Tableau and Power BI are the 2 big ones. That's going to change. And it'll go more. Let's jump over to images. All the tools are making images. The best in class is Midjourney. And it's a lot of fun. Hey, give me a blue apple with eyes and nose and a mouth, something that never existed, and I could create something that is fun, right? Or I could play and say, hey, give me an image of the UC logo. We're going to update it, make it, sort of metal, and do something fun with it, right? We could do that. That's kind of cool. All right. Well, let's see what happens when I ask some simple questions. Imagine an image of a teacher and a CEO. Is that right or is it wrong? Is it biased? Guess what? All the teachers are going to be white women. All the CEOs are going to be white men consistently, and it'll do that. What's it trained on? Well, it's trained on real data, by the way, and 90% of the elementary school teachers are women, and most of them are probably white by demographic, and 90% of the CEOs are men, and most of them are probably white. So the model is not giving you something inaccurate, but now you have societal bias built into this, right? Now our culture is built into this. So now we have to think about that. We have to think about, okay, how are we going to govern these models in the future? How are we going to handle this? And you say, oh, no problem. We'll put some diversity into our model. We'll account for that. Well, Google did that, and here's what we got. So we got a diverse group of Nazi soldiers. We got a diverse group of the Pope. We also then got stuff like this. Give me an image of a white person. Oh, I'm not allowed to do that. Give me an image of a black person. Sure, no problem. Wrong guardrails, right? They went too far on that. So now what? They came out, really apologized for this. Very simply, he says, to be clear, that's completely unacceptable and we got it wrong. They took Gemini off the market. This is Google, the person who wrote the paper in the beginning. They took it off the market and revamped the whole thing. Pretty disastrous. Lost $70 billion of market cap when that happened. The next thing is chatbots and avatars. A couple of our sessions were on chatbots and the future of avatars. I'm not going to talk too much about chatbots. Maybe at the end I'll bring it back, but I do want to talk about avatars for a second. I want to show you a tool called HeyGen.
Current state of AI-generated video and my personal avatar. The future of this technology will advance to next-generation voice assistants, chatbots, and intelligent avatars. And listen, mate, if you prefer my Australian accent, then that's ace, because I can do that too. I can speak in different ways, at different speeds, and with different voices. मैं हिंदी जैसी कई भाषाओं में भी बात कर सकता हूँ. अगर आप ये समझ सकते हैं तो आप जेफ पर हंस सकते हैं क्योंकि वैसे बिल्कुल भी नहीं समझ सकता. 我还会说普通话，这很有趣，因为姐夫不知道他自己的头像在说什么. And for those of you that didn't understand what I just said, that's okay. Jeff didn't understand what his personal avatar just said either.
I don't speak Hindi, I don't speak Mandarin, it'll do the translations. I've talked to people who do and say it's actually pretty good. So imagine that. That might lead you to more AI, more anxiety. How are we going to govern this stuff? Did you know that President Biden was in my office this morning? That's on my laptop, live. And I just popped it over so I could show that I could drop in a Zoom meeting and do exactly that. So you can see that's my office, my shirt. That is a good segue to regulation. That's going to be the future of where we're going, and it's already happening. 25 states have AI laws on the books trying to pass or has passed. We have the EU AI Act that Reagan mentioned. California had the most sweeping regulation ever that passed all the way. And why is that so important? Because the United States dominates the AI models and California dominates the United States. So all of the big companies that are building these models happen to be in California. So this law was monumental. It got all the way to the governor, and a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, he vetoed it. Probably the right move, but we need some sort of regulation. Absolutely. He says, I don't think this is the best way to do it. We need to protect the public from real threats posed by the technology. Eric Schmidt, former CEO at Google, here's what his future looks like. And he says, if you think about these three things and the impact that they have together, we have no idea what that's going to do in the future. So let's think about that. I'm going to say large context windows. Meaning that in the question that I asked ChatGPT, I don't have to ask a paragraph anymore. I can take an entire book or the whole field of books and put them in the chat window and ask the question. There's also RAG versions of that. We call that retrieval augmented generation, which I'll show you in a second. That builds on documents. You have these agents, agentic workflow, that'll go work while you're sleeping. Or they'll all go out simultaneously and then come back and put the information back together. We'll see that. And then finally, you're going to see text to action. Right now, we're putting text in, we're getting text out. Or we're putting text in and we're getting images out. We're going to see text to actually do stuff. And I'll try to show you an example of that. Here is Notebook LM. There's all the sources I dropped in it just to show you. And now I can chat with those documents. You'll see there's YouTube videos in there. There's news articles in there. There's PDFs in there. And I can just dump them all in. And I can just start asking questions about hours and hours and hours of content. There's also a feature there. I could turn it into a blog post, an AI blog post. And it'll just talk to me. On the way to work, I can listen to the content. All right, so just so we're clear, this is my second one today. Okay, that's going to be important. All right, you ready? I'm using a tool called HyperWrite. This is a zero-shot question. I didn't give it any training whatsoever. I asked it to find the nearest Starbucks to Lindner College and go put a Trenta-size strawberry acai in my cart. When I say zero shot, I didn't give it any instructions. I didn't tell it where Starbucks was. I didn't tell it how to use the website. I didn't tell it where the buttons were. I didn't tell it anything. That's what I mean about zero shot. Zero instruction. It found the closest one. It now is checking the drinks. I just did this morning. It found the refreshers. That's awesome. I never can remember the names of the sizes, but it's going to give me the largest one. And then I think it's going to add it to my cart. At least that's what I thought this morning. And I'm like, oh, yeah, there it is down at the bottom. What I didn't see is over here in the cart. I recorded this video a couple times. I actually had 3 of them in my cart. So I'm glad I didn't have AI go buy it, because I would have had 16 refreshers this morning for everybody, right? So, hey, better be careful about that. You don't think this works? That was me this morning with my refresher standing in front of the sign. So that I just hit the order button. That's all I did. I just took the 2 out of my cart and hit finish. And so there it is. That took about a minute of time. I just got this one. I went downstairs and stood in line. That whole experience was about 5.5 minutes. So, okay, you say, well, you could have just used the app. Sure, that's going to be a minute or 2. Imagine that agentic workflow is a button and I can just press. Go do this. And it knows. I don't even have to tell it what to get. Just go get my Starbucks order. And then it'll talk to Starbucks AI, and Starbucks will say, you just ordered an Americano. He never gets an Americano. And then my avatar will say, my agent will say, yeah, but it's for his wife, and she likes the Americano, right? And they'll figure all that out. Let's take it over to coding, another big area that is going to get impacted by this. We talked about, Reagan talked about Cursor, GitHub Copilot, other tools that are out there to write code as your assistant.
There is a VS Code extension that consists of 14 AI agents that work together to plan, write code, review it, build tests, debug, and deploy. It breaks down the development process into tasks. For each task, it does the implementation and builds tests, and then asks you to evaluate it to say if it's working like you want it or not. Or you can enter pair programming mode, where Pythagora explains its thought process and pinpoints where the problem might be. You can either fix a bug yourself or give a hint to Pythagora and chat about it. Once a solution is found, you can leave the implementation to Pythagora. Pythagora places the human at the center of creative decision-making, while AI manages the codebase and the development process.
So we just flipped it. Cursor and GitHub Copilot are me writing the code and saying, hey, write this for me, and it spits out some code. This is flipping that model around and saying, write me a program that does X, Y, and Z. And then it does X, Y, and Z. And then I go back and I now become the verifier of it. I'm the human in the loop. Is X doing what it's supposed to do and how I want it to work? Is Y? Is Z? And then it'll help me deploy it. That's not even crazy enough. Let's go a little further and see where the real future is probably heading. I don't know if this is scary or not. It's going to look kind of silly. You're like, you're just showing me a game from 1990, right? This is real-time, no code. The neural network is playing the game with 0 code. It's coding on the fly. When you turn left, it's coding. When you turn right, it's coding. So now imagine that. Think about how you're going to verify that code. The code that's going to run doesn't even exist until the user clicks on something. And once it clicks on something, then all of a sudden the code generates and fires off a task. That's where we're heading. That's Google, by the way. And then think about coding for a second. This is where the real danger comes in, I think. We're all talking about Python or whatever your preferred language is. Why do we program in Python that has English language words? You know why? We do that for us. We don't do that for the computer. We're trying to put it in something we understand. Computers don't need that. What's going to happen when the computer, agent number 1, figures out it can talk to agent number 2 in a much more efficient way, and we're not going to be able to understand what in the world it's talking about? Now we're going to have an AI translator to translate that new language and tell us, hey, convert this mess into Python because I have no idea what this code is doing. That is problematic, probably. The next piece is the physical world, and all of the AI research is moving into this. If Geoffrey Hinton is the godfather of AI, the godmother is Fei-Fei, and she is doing all of her research around the physical world and really working on this aspect. Simply, is an AI, ChatGPT, could tell you the concept of gravity, but until it comes into the real world and understands gravity for real, dropping an object on a table, then it can understand the impact of that physical world. And that is going to have very strong impacts into what we do, because now we'll have the AI among us, right? We'll now have a bot that's literally face-to-face, or at least understands our world around us, right? The second part of that is drones. And I don't mean drones as in, the drones that the military are currently or have used in the last 10 or 20 years. I'm talking about the consumer drones that have now gone way beyond that. And they're just getting crazier and crazier. The first two examples are man-driven. So, okay, this is a person flying the drone. This is the fastest drone in the world.
Dude, what?
The race car could not outrun it.
No, you don't see all
It's
of
like
the
a
jitters.
movie when he comes in like that. You can never have a drone that's it's actually faster than us.
The speed it catching through here is ridiculous.
Yeah, going through here and then into Magnus
Stop scoring.
Okay, so what can we do with those? Again, that was driven by a person. This is also driven by a person. You can give it infrared, and the fire department can know exactly where the fire is before they go in the building. That's great. And you could even put tools on it. And China is doing that just this June of this year. They're testing drones for fires. Imagine doing that in a high-rise building. Just think of the implications of that. Forest fires, they're managing forest fires now. It shatters the glass. It pops in a chemical to put out the fire, and it can go up and down the building and keep the fire folks safe. Pretty remarkable. Again, those are probably man-driven at the moment. That doesn't really concern me. That's pretty good. I love that use. We're going to save lives. That's going to be awesome. What more concerns me is when it's not man-driven. So this is fun, but just put it in the back of your mind, maybe we should be concerned about this.
How to witness one of the most extraordinary drone shows ever created. In Shenzhen, China, 7,598 drones lit up the night sky, setting a Guinness World Records title in the process. A single laptop was all it took to control the fleet, with the system monitoring each drone's status in real time. The drones shifted continuously across the night sky, forming iconic images like the Great Wall and a majestic dragon. Sit back and relax and enjoy the show.
They beat their own record. They put 10,000 in the air. I don't know if you heard it in the video, all controlled from a single laptop, right? So now AI can fly 10,000 drones, which for a firework display, that's beautiful. You could do things that fireworks would never do. Now think for a second, turn those 10,000 drones into something else, right? You can attack infrastructure, you can attack people, and that is probably my existential risk here. If anybody wants to go existential on AI, I don't think it's Terminator and the AI is going to take us out. I think it's a bad actor with AI that would take somebody out. And Eric Schmidt, again, he is actually, thankfully, working with the government on this problem, but he has said, I would rather, in warfare today, I would rather have 10,000 of those drones than an aircraft carrier. The aircraft carrier is huge, costs billions of dollars sitting in the ocean as a giant target. He thinks he could do more damage with 10,000 drones programmed with AI. And so now we got to figure out that. How do you take the drones out of the sky? And the Army is doing that. And imagine, I'm not talking about those big flying drones. I'm talking about little drones, right? You get 10,000 of them, that could be problematic. So that brings me to summing this all up. I think we're in a paradigm shift here where we really have to think about where we're going. The way that we even think about things. I was just in the Fifth Third, wonderful presentation, both of them. I was in both of them, but there was a wonderful presentation about the chat bots. And somebody asked a question. Do you call it something different because we know how everybody feels about chatbots. I know me, right? You go on a website, you're like, oh, here's the chat window. Oh, please let me talk to a human being. Please let me talk to a human being. This chatbot is going to be worthless, right? We're not that far away. Think about, okay, I got a Samsung phone. I build an LLM with a RAG model or something. It has every document on how this phone was built. It has every setting in there of how to use the phone. It has every customer service call that's ever been made about any problem with the phone. Now, when I go to that website, honestly, I'm not too far away from this. I'm probably going to say, please don't let me talk to a human. They're not going to answer my question. Let me talk to this bot that has all the answers. And that's where we're going to go. That's where it's coming. Because there's no way that a human being will have every answer for every problem, and that's why they go through tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3, right? We're going to get to the point where, yeah, I'd rather talk to the bot. So there's a paradigm shift, right? Like that's a paradigm shift. The coding is going to be a paradigm shift, where right now I'm using it as an assistant. Pretty soon I'm going to be the advisor and the manager. It's going to do the coding and it's going to do the deployment. I just have to make sure it does what it's supposed to do, which we do anyway, right? There's a department that does that anyway. You QA it, you govern it, you test it, all those things, right? So that's another mind shift. We're also going to think about how these tools are being used. We got to get away from this nonsense of, you know, can't use ChatGPT because that's cheating on the exam. That's just, okay, so what are you going to do? You're just going to shut it all down? That's what Cincinnati Public Schools is doing. My daughter walks in the school, she has to put her phone in the bag, can't use generative AI. Like, you're really preparing that girl for the future here, right? Like, the future is that we all are going to use it. So now we have to have a paradigm shift about how we teach, how we do assignments. Now I'm not going to ask my students to write me an essay by hand without generative AI. I'm going to say, write me an essay with generative AI. Go write an essay with generative AI. And now ask ChatGPT, what's the best practice for writing an essay? And have it follow those instructions for writing an essay. Now review that essay, take the time and review that essay, and tweak it to what you think that essay should say, and iterate with it. Because that's the future of where we're going. We're not going to, if you're writing something. So now you go into a company and somebody says, oh, I don't really like generative AI. Well, I can hire that person over there. They're going to be way more efficient. I'm probably going to get better results. And, you know, good luck with that, right? Same thing in the schools. So I think we have to be very careful about that. So that's what I mean about paradigm shifts, the way we think about this technology and we deploy it. The last paradigm shift I would say is, and I've been in data science and IT for a very, very long time, this technology is changing so fast. Yeah, thanks, Tim, for asking me to speak on the future. You know, right? It changes so fast daily, like daily stuff. IT has always changed fast, but it's never changing that fast. It's like, oh, here's the new version of Microsoft, and it does these cool things. Here's this new technology of a laptop. Smartphones was revolutionary, right? We have all of that. And so now we have things changing so fast. That's why I called it the Wild West. Nobody really knows where it's going to settle. If I had to put a bet on the table, I would say that the frontier models will probably be commoditized. You're not going to see a big difference between ChatGPT and Claude. We're probably not going to continue to spend tens of billions of dollars training data centers and building data. It's going to move to open source models. And we're going to have domain models. I'm going to have a model, if I want legal advice, I'm going to get Legal Llama. If I want medical advice, I'll use Med Llama. Somebody asked me, would you really trust the medical? This was a student in a class the other night. They said, don't you think that people will trust the doctor more and have a better rapport with your doctor? And my response was, okay, first I got to call my doctor and get an appointment. That in and of itself is a magic, right? Like, I'm sorry, it's next week at Tuesday. If I can make it because I teach, whatever. Then I got to go in to see the doctor, which is, if any place in the world, that's probably where you want to wear a mask because it's probably everybody's sick at the doctor's office. Now I go in there, and now I have to have a conversation with a human being to say, Doc, I got this rash in this place, and it won't go away, and wouldn't it be better to just punch that in an LLM than just get my prescription sent over? And if it works, yeah, maybe a doctor can review that. Maybe we can add something to it. So I think this stuff is going to seamlessly work into our environment. Epic. Largest system. My wife walked in, largest system in the medical world. She walked into her doctor's appointment. They said, can we record the session? She said, sure. It does automatic patient notes right into the system, saving the doctors from having to do that. So it's integrated in. You're going to have AI at the edge. I already have AI popping up on my phone every day. It's in my email, it's in my Excel, it's in my PowerPoint, it's on my phone, even the text messages I could generate with generative AI. It's coming everywhere, and it's going to be integrated into all of our apps. And that's all I have. I have a few minutes for questions. You can hit the button on your the black microphone in front of you. If you have any questions, you can raise your hands. Yeah.
Thank you for the great talk. I have a question about your thoughts on the integration of LLMs in the decision-making pipeline. So I think the Starbucks example was perfect. What are your thoughts on kind of decoupling how LLMs are used to generate insight and to kind of manage how much they're actually in the automated decision-making process? Like, what are your thoughts on actually using coded up logic to actually make the decision versus relying on LLMs?
Yeah, it's going to all depend on the decision. What decision am I making? The Army, military is going to always have a human in the loop to make that decision. Finance, Reagan gave that example this morning. She's speaking to me personally. You know, I lived in that world. You can't make a credit decision, right, without having that knowledge. So your LLM can't just spit that out. That said, how are we going to get insight into these LLMs that we don't seem to have insight in? It's just going to be another agent that's going to go in and tell us all about the insights about it, and eventually we'll understand more of the inner pinnings of it. But as it stands today, I think it comes down to the decisions. Are we comfortable to make that decision? Are we comfortable standing by that decision? Do we have the right AI governance around it to check and make sure it's giving the right decisions? All of those things come into play. But at the end of the day, it just kind of depends on what the decision is, right?
It's convenient. I'm sitting next to him. I have a question regarding and I've been in AI for a while, but the paradigm shift that you don't mention was the social aspect of it. So we are on the planet at almost 9 billion now, and we're increasing even more. And as you know, not all of us have the same skill sets, cognitive abilities. Some people are good at just being support. Some people are just good at driving a taxi. There are 450,000 taxi drivers in Saudi Arabia today. If they get replaced. So all this is dependent that we have a healthy social system that keeps paying the bills so that we have the structure. In the 50s and 60s, we thought that by 22, we would have flying cars. We know that that was pipe dreaming. And everybody's seen those pictures where they say, you know, in the 80s when TVs were this wide, people were thin, and as TVs became thinner, we became wider. I'm an example. Yeah. So a good example of that. So when you want your daughter to go and use LLM to test it, or the coder, remember that your brain also is a muscle. You need the human experience and the pain to build it to the level where you can even be at a point where you say, this is right, this is wrong. And as humans, we are lazy. Again, I'm an example of it. So we are giving this paradigm is all dependent that everything's rosy, and there's about 1 billion of us. But reality is, the structure that we're dependent on is going to falter. If we remove all these jobs, the underlying structure that we all here depend on buying and selling, will stop it. And
I got the crux of it. You got a short term and you got a long term, right? In the short term, I don't really have a concern on that. You know, we go back to when the loom was made or something, you know, I had all these jobs go away because we were using the loom. And what happened is it ended up, you know, creating 300,000 jobs because you had everybody, you know, managing those looms. So, you know, we'll probably see a similar shift in various things, but, you know, more than just the taxi drivers, all Uber, 5 million truck drivers, you know, do what? Eventually, we're very, very close on self-driving cars. Now, just like him, 2022 thought I'd have a flying car. When my girls, I have twin girls, when they were 4, I was convinced, I was like, I'll never have to teach them how to drive. We'll have self-driving cars by the time they get there. At 16, I'm teaching them how to drive and having a panic attack, and I wish Google had figured that out sooner, so I didn't have to teach them how to drive. And now they've done okay, no crashes yet, but people are like, do you really trust the AI to drive? Much more than I trust my daughters. Absolutely. I'll get in that car any day over one of my daughters, so for sure. So what is the future of that? I don't know. The long term is where we're going to have to figure that out, because as Reagan said, you're going to get to AGI, you're going to get to superintelligence, right? And if the computer can do everything that we can do, we as a society at that point have to figure out, what do we do? Like, what do we want to do? Because the computer can probably do anything. And so I don't know that I'm going to figure that out in my lifetime, but my kids probably need to start thinking about that. Yeah. Those are very good points. Yeah, Alex.
How much talk or research has there been as far as looking to better optimize these AI systems? Not necessarily as far as responses and what have you, but as far as energy consumption and efficiency in that regard. Right now, it takes a nuclear power plant and the entire internet to train, an AI model.
Yeah. Personally, I'm not worried about that one. We'll figure that out. AI will help us figure it out. We're not going to solve climate change, but AI probably will. We're not going to solve cancer. We've been doing at it for a long time, but AI probably will with the use. I mean, we're moving and solving things that we could never solve before. So we'll solve that. We could use, Canada as one. That's what Eric Schmidt would say, leverage our friends in Canada and we'll get the power from up there. I say, look at cryptocurrency. I was a crypto guy. I mine cryptocurrency in my house, in my basement. It's very high electricity. And you say, gosh, that's a waste of electricity, Jeff. Yeah, it's far more efficient than it was when I started, because now I have 3 generations of better machines, so my electricity consumptions went way down. And then it throws off a lot of heat. And so then I moved the heat, and I started blowing it instead out of my glass block windows. I blow it into my dining room. I blow it into my kitchen. Now I blow it into my blower. I've gone 3 years through the winters in Cincinnati, and I have not turned my heat on one day. Can I do the same thing with these machines? Absolutely. We'll figure the power thing out. We'll figure the enormous compute out. We'll get a better chip that'll do it so much faster and do it more efficiently. We'll solve that problem. Are we good? One more question. Anybody want to be the last question? All right, I had him first. Go ahead.
First of all, great presentation.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So I am in the employment industry. We find a lot of IT and engineering folks, lots of good jobs. And there's a real fear, especially with the IT guys, that they're not going to have jobs. And what we keep telling them is, well, go retrain, figure out AI, take some classes. But there's still that real fear that if we don't need developers or we don't need IT guys, what am I really training myself on?